And my friends, welcome to another exciting edition of Meet the Author, not at the Pyramid Club, but on Zoom. On Zoom. I am excited to share with you today some wonderful information from a wonderful author. Also to introduce you to a colleague of mine and a dear friend, Lysandra. So Lysandra is going to be our chat room ambassador. So you will see her playing in the chat room, asking questions, answering questions, capturing quotes. But Lysandra, share with folks, who are you and what do you do? What are you all about?
Thank you so much, Teresa. Welcome, everyone. It's my pleasure to share this space with Teresa and Jevon, and I'm excited to get into the learning along with you. My name is Lysandra Cheatham. I am in management consulting, and I've had diverse roles throughout my journey, but one thing that remains consistent is my passion to learn and the superpower of curiosity. And I bring that in my current role to help individuals, organizations, leaders solve complex problems by serving as a strategic partner. And how can we harness the value of curiosity and creating a space where people can learn so it can amplify what they're able to accomplish. So that's me in a nutshell. I welcome you to connect with me and also Teresa on LinkedIn. I'll drop our links in the chat, and I hope you enjoy the session.
Cool. Lysandra, thank you so much for joining us today. Always good to have a buddy. It's good to have a partner. Anybody who runs these Zoom sessions know it's really more than a one-person job. You need to have some friends. So there's some stuff coming up that we want to share with you. So we have coming up at Meet the Author in person, we have Susan Catane, Carol Algier, Kathy Lanyon. They wrote a book called Cakewalk, a fully baked memoir. We're getting together Thursday, September 12th at 6 p.m. at the Pyramid Club. These three ladies are sisters, and they opened a company that sells liquor-infused cakes. Who doesn't love a liquor-infused cake, right? But what's interesting about this book, not only does it share their story of starting their company, but it also shares their childhood, which is eye-opening. And it's amazing to me that these three women are such bright, beautiful, happy souls, because their childhood was rough. It was a tough childhood, but they're beautiful, bright souls. I'd love to see you at the Pyramid Club to celebrate with us as they launch their new book. If you would like to join us, we have a code to save 50% off. If you use Teresa Friend, all one word, Teresa Friend, you're in for 50% off. So that's cool. You also want to mark your calendar, November 14th, 6 p.m. at the Pyramid Club. We have the Fall Women's Author Panel. Right now we have 5 women who have committed. My sense is we'll probably have 7 or 8 by the time we get to November. Always a good time. So mark your calendar. We should have signups open for that in September. So now we're ready to introduce our author. And this is, I always tell, like, how did I get to know this author? He wrote to me and asked to connect on LinkedIn. And I was like, wait a minute. What does this guy want? Is he trying to sell me something? I was honest with him because I was like, what? He did not want to sell me something. He actually just wanted to get to know me as a fellow person who does similar work, speaking and training and coaching. And we had an amazingly lovely conversation. And then he said, and I have this book. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you need to be a guest on Meet the Author. And he trusted me enough to be here today as a guest on Meet the Author. So please welcome my new friend and our guest author, Jevon Wooden. Jevon, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Teresa. I really appreciate it. And yes, we started. That's the beauty of serendipity, right? Never know what you're going to get. And now we're friends.
Yes, we are friends. And the nice thing about this is now we get to know each other. We know what each person does. We can help each other in the future. but I'm delighted you had a book because now I can really take a deep dive in getting to know who you are and others can get to know you. So before we dive into the book, tell us about you and the work that you do.
Absolutely. So, as you said, I'm Jevon Wooden. My background stems from the Army. I spent 12 years in the Army, primarily on the reserve side, but it didn't feel like it because I kept getting deployed. And I also spent time in a corporate world doing cybersecurity, security architecture, to be exact. But I started this business known as Bright Mind Consulting Group, actually on my last deployment to Afghanistan in 2017. And it was really because I was coming to the latter stage of my career. I knew I couldn't do the military, just physically and emotionally. I just wasn't there anymore. And then tech, I got tired of doing the ones and zeros thing, Teresa. I was like, you
Yeah.
know what? This is all great. It pays the bills, but it was not feeding my soul. It was actually doing the exact opposite and burning me out. So I realized I really wanted to help people. So this business, what I'm doing now, started with helping others overcome overwhelm and trauma. My background from being from Rochester, New York, growing up in an impoverished environment was not kind. So I learned a lot through that, but I learned a lot through it only by looking backwards. So we're going to cover some of that today as we talk about Own Your Kingdom.
Wow. Wow. So we do similar work, but each of us has taken a different path to get here. But I think we both bring a passion because of what we've learned in our lives.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
writing a book, and those of you that are published, you know this. I'm just stating the obvious here. It is tough to get a book put together and published, but you did it. Why did you write this book?
Yeah, this book, I wrote it in 2021, September 2021. And I wrote it at that stage. I had no idea I was going to do this. It was
Okay.
not on my radar, to be honest, but something told me, like, just voice my thoughts. And when I was voicing my thoughts, I was like, you know what? I think I have something here. I have all these experiences that I've gone through. And if I'm going through it, then people have gone through it as well. And this really was a late product that I had posted something on social media, just sharing that I wasn't at my best. And
Okay.
other people started DMing me and saying, man, I'm so glad you said that because I've been feeling this, this, and this. And a community was built around that. So I said, you know what? I'm going to continue with these thoughts that I was just talking out. And I just put an outline together and got it together. So this really was something to help say, how do you overcome adversity? And how do you look at yourself like the beautiful person and spirit you are?
Mm.
Takes a little bit to get there. So that's what this became a product from.
Wow. I admire that because I'll tell you, when I'm inspired like that, I write an article. Dude, you wrote a book. So I'm inspired by that.
Well,
So
articles can become books. So
I
you know
know,
this.
I know. I got friends pushing me on that. They're like, T, you keep writing these articles, put them together
Do
in,
it.
in a book. It'll happen. It'll happen. And then I'll be on your podcast. There you go.
Absolutely.
There you go. So you're the title of your book is Owning Your Kingdom. So help me understand, what does that even mean, owning your kingdom?
So when I was putting the title together and I looked at what I was talking about and the message I was conveying about, self-confidence and having the right proper mindset and all these pieces about intrinsic love, really what it is, and awareness.
Mm,
So I look at that as the kingdom, right? You are the kingdom. If you do not feel and value yourself, how can you expect anyone else to do that? So it's really about owning your value, owning your thoughts, owning your actions. So that's a principle of accountability, but also love within yourself.
yeah. I love that intrinsic love. Like, I don't even think we think about that, right? It's not
Right.
on our mind, but it is really foundational to having a good mindset, having a good life. Because I know I'm preaching to the choir here. I'm all about mindset. And I know
Yes.
that is a big part of what you talk about in your book. So we both do some coaching work. So what are some themes that you see in your coaching practice that are kind of signs that someone is struggling with scarcity mindset? And let's talk about what scarcity mindset is and what are the signs that we can see that they're struggling with that?
Absolutely. So there's really two mindsets, two main premises or principles of mindset. So you have scarcity mindset, which is the thought that there's a finite resource, like success is finite. And it also, so when you have that mindset, you're typically saying things like, "Oh, I'm not good enough," or I don't have this," or you look at things from a negative standpoint. Instead of saying, "I'm grateful because I have X," you say, "Oh, I'm so upset because I don't have this." You look at success, you get jealous when you see someone else
Yeah.
doing well. You start trying to rationalize why that person shouldn't have things, and you stop focusing on what you need to do. Right? You're not open to learning lessons. You're more about complaining instead of taking action. Right? Typically, in the
Right.
scarcity mindset. And then from the growth mindset standpoint, it's the exact opposite. People who have growth mindset, they're typically more collaborative. They're typically happier because they're looking at things. I wouldn't say that glass half full and half empty thing, but they look at, the lessons, even in
Yes.
shortfalls. They're going to say, what have I learned after they go ahead and process the fact that things didn't go their way? You don't stay there with a growth mindset, right? You just say, you know what? There's nothing I can do about that. Let me control the controllables. So how outside of what I just said, how do you know if someone's in the scarcity mindset or you yourself is in a scarcity mindset? One, you may not feel confident. The
Mm,
second thing is if you really pay attention to your thoughts, most of them will be negative, right? You will gripe constantly. You will feel tired typically because you're carrying all that weight. I call it the negative anchor. And then the other thing is your relationships may struggle
mm.
because you don't have that confidence, because you see things from a negative standpoint. You typically don't communicate well, and you get very
Oh.
defensive if someone tries to give you feedback.
So how do we flip the switch for someone who's there? Or is it possible to flip the switch?
Absolutely possible. I was that person. So I said I went through this when I was younger, in my teenage years. I really had no sense of what value was. I thought it was monetary. Thought you had to have money to be valued. So I really lacked confidence.
Ah,
I was frustrated. I was upset because I was tired of being poor and I was tired of my family going through struggles. So it got me in trouble at 17. At 17, I faced 7 years in prison because I was tired of being poor. And I said, I don't have anything, so I'm going to see if I can go get it from someone else. And that just was not the answer. So I sat in that jail cell for months, awaiting my fate to be decided by someone else. And
wow.
really, what I talk about a lot today is empathy and emotional intelligence. I learned really the value of empathy sitting in that jail cell awaiting this, because not only did my mother put up our house, which had housed my
Oh,
sisters and my brother and herself. She put it up so I didn't have to get a public defender, so I can get a real lawyer. So that showed me value right then. But then also, the judge that I stood in front of said, "I see something in you. I believe in you. I am not going to have you do this time, but prove me right." And that showed me that I
wow.
was more value than any money was ever worth. I just needed to find how I was going to leverage that superpower. So that's really where, a catalyst for what I go through in this book today. And then more so in the military. The military really set out a lot of lessons that I learned and that I apply in this book. So that's really how I got to this point today.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's a couple of things I thought of as you were sharing that. One is you were able to come to this conclusion because you had time to ponder.
Hmm.
I mean, you
Yeah.
weren't enjoying your time in the jail, but one thing you did have was time to ponder. And many of us, we really don't. We
Yeah.
we don't make the time, we don't take the time. We're in busy mode from one thing to another. But because you had that time, you were able to think through what really matters, what's important, what am I doing? And I
Yes.
think back, I'm going to compare you to some really special people. I'm going to compare you to like Buddha. I'm going to compare you to Muhammad. I'm going to compare you to Jesus. All three of these thought leaders and spiritual leaders took time
That's it.
to think. Now, I can't be like Buddha. There are days where I'm like, maybe I should just go sit under a tree for a couple of years and get myself together, right? Jesus would have like 40 days and 40 nights.
Right.
I I don't know if I can do that, but
No.
I appreciate that the time that you had help you get to this point of not only wisdom, but wisdom to share with others.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you're hitting on it right there, Teresa. Like it first you have to decide. We hear that a lot,
Yes.
but before you decide, you also have to take accountability. Right. I mentioned earlier the controlling what you can control. Right. The one thing that you can control is what you do, how
Yes.
you speak, how you act, and to find out if you're aiming towards the goal that you want. Because oftentimes we set superficial goals. We don't set like who do I want to be, and if I find out who I want to be, am I living to that right now? Does what I'm doing, does the actions I'm taking align with my values and align with the person in the future that I want to become? And if you don't have that, then you're gonna be off track, right? Because you're like
Yes.
a ship sailing in the middle of the ocean. You don't
Yeah.
have a goal. There's no compass, right? So
Right.
we have to make sure that we take the time to look at all that stuff and take ownership to say, you know what? I know that I can be a little bit better. I'm going to hold myself accountable. I'm going to be mindful of my thoughts and catch them. It's not about false positivity and saying, oh no, that's
No, no.
I'm happy go lucky all the time, but it's about paying attention so you can be intelligent about what's going on, so you can
Yeah.
respond versus react in situations and scenarios, so you can process what's going on. Because a lot of us, we just don't realize, we don't train ourselves to listen to what's happening within. Our body tells us a lot. So
Yes.
yeah, our body tells us a lot. Because I know back then, like I used to hold a lot of stress and tension, like in my neck and all that stuff. So I started paying attention to patterns. And you can do the same. Because once you identify your behavioral patterns, then you start to see triggers. And once you see the triggers, now you can learn how to disarm yourself when those triggers arise. So it's really a process of intentional mindfulness, and then taking action and planning that out, and then just watching. It's a practice. It's like yoga, right? It's like meditation. It's a practice. We won't always get it right, but if we take incremental steps every day, we will be
Yes.
better at this.
Absolutely. So all of this, because you're giving so many tips. Did you have somebody helping you with this? Did you have like a mentor or a coach, or was this you just being disciplined and having a rigor? How did you get from really far from where you are to where you are now? How did you make that happen?
Yeah, I mean, initially, no, I didn't have a mentor or anyone. I did a lot of personal development with self, and then I
Okay.
would say I had what I call virtual mentors. So I looked at people and I said, you know what, this person inspires me. What are they doing in life? And I'll go, if they had an autobiography, I'll read that. If they had something on YouTube, then I'll watch it, because I want to hear what they're saying. And I'm not going to do it while I'm doing other things. I want to sit with it. I literally would
Yes.
close my eyes and listen to the Muhammad Ali's and the Baracks and all these great people, orators, Winston Churchill's, just to hear like how they thought,
Sure.
what they would do, how they responded to adversity. And it was typically that they took a moment, right? They always took a moment and were very
Yes.
thoughtful about their actions and what they did next. They were never, just right to the point. They always were calculated. So I had to learn that myself. I said, you know what? I'm too impulsive. I'm too impulsive, whether it be me getting upset or whether it
Hmm.
be me just saying something and then regretting it later. So I had to learn how to slow myself down so that I can leverage my virtual mentors, and also think about the consequences of an action. Because
Yes.
oftentimes we forget about looking at what that decision, the impact that it may make. So I had to learn how to do all of that stuff by myself. And it wasn't until maybe past 2 years that I actually had gotten a mentor that I can call a mentor.
Nice. But I think there's something to be said for this outside influence that helps to shape us in some way.
Absolutely.
And frankly, that's why people hire a coach sometimes. Sometimes
Yes.
they see the destination, like this is where I want to be. I don't know how to get there. I don't
Yes.
know how to get there.
Absolutely.
So they'll
Absolutely.
hire whether it be like physical fitness, people hire a trainer. I know what good looks like. I know where I am now. I just need somebody to help me get there. Um,
Right.
I love the virtual mentors because I have them too. I
Yes,
do. Man,
yes, yes.
I like Alan Watts isn't even alive anymore. If you're not familiar with Alan Watts, he's out there on YouTube, millions of lectures. This guy, wise, just a wise guy. So not like a wise guy, but like a smart guy.
Oh, I hope he's not a wise guy and you
No,
follow.
he's not a wise guy, but I listen to him and he helps to keep me grounded and he helps me to kind of see through the weeds to see what's really, really important. But I think
Absolutely.
having mentors of some sort, in person or virtual,
Right.
alive or dead,
And
but
yeah,
having that influence is super, super important.
right. And I will say, like, that I can say I haven't had formal mentors, right? But
Okay.
informally, I have, right? I've learned a lot from a lot of different people throughout my life, whether they knew it or not. I was watching, right? So, and then also the coaching aspect, going through becoming a coach, right? The certified coaching path,
Sure.
you have to be coached, and that's really where I realized the beauty of coaching. And also, after my deployment, I mentioned the Afghanistan in 2017. When I returned home, that was really another inflection point. I could have decided to take a wrong path once again, or I could have did what did, because I was facing horrible PTSD, and depression had
Mm,
set in 6 months later after I got home.
wow.
So that was a point where I had to get help, because if I didn't, I may not be sitting in front of you today. So I called my sister, who I depend on. That she pretty much virtually raised me with my mother. Right? She's only 3 years older than me, but I always leaned on her for love and support. So I called her one day because I was like, I'm just not feeling good. And this is where vulnerability comes in. Learning that vulnerability is strength. So
Mm,
I realized that this is the first time in my life that I was ever vulnerable with any of my siblings. So, and it just happened to be I was in dire need. She said 2 words when I called her. She listened to everything I was saying, which was probably unintelligible because I was, hysterical. And she just said, "Get help." She said, "Get help." She said, "Man," they call me man. She said, "Man, go ahead and get help. See a therapist, get a doc, whatever you need to do." So that just gave me agency to be free. That was the first
wow.
time I actually felt that. I literally felt the weight of having to be superhuman, I thought, because I never was told that I could show weakness, never was told that a man could get help, never was told any of these things, show emotion, all those things. So you always have this poker face, right? As if everything's
Yes.
okay. And when someone asks you, you say, "Yeah, I'm good," but you're not.
Yeah.
So that was the first time I really realized the power of like therapy and truly being open to all of these things and coaching and all that stuff, and just opening up and not censoring yourself, just allowing whatever comes out of you to come. Because a lot of us, we're so worried subconsciously. We're
Yes.
worried about what that other person is going to think. We're worried about how we're perceived, or even if it's just a one-on-one with your therapist. A lot of us
Yes.
censor. So I would say to the listeners, be vulnerable, right? Find that person that you can talk to. You don't have to start with the deepest, darkest things. Just start with saying, "Hey, I'm not okay. I'm not feeling at my best today." And you will be surprised how that person supports you. Because a lot of my clients, I hear them often, they're saying, "My spouse, I don't want to put the burden on them. I don't want to be a burden."
Oh,
Or my sister, my whoever it is. You're not a burden, right? They actually want to be there for those moments.
yes.
So that's what I had to learn the hard way. But now I leverage that lesson, and I apply that to everything that I do.
It takes, and I love the quote, vulnerability is strength. That's going to stick with me. I think we are kind of groomed to suck it up, be strong, figure it out.
Hmm.
Um, and what we really need to learn is there are times where asking for help is the best option. It is the
Absolutely.
smartest thing we can do. And we are communal people, like we are meant to work with each other to help each other. You're going to be having a good day and I'm not having a good day. You're going to help me with that. And then there's going to be a day that's not so good for you. I'm going to help you with that. And
Right.
we have to see that it's okay to ask for help. and get that help from a trusted partner.
100%. And that lesson. It's not only good just for relational purposes, but if you really want to have sustained success, it's not a journey that can be taken alone. Whatever success means to you, right? Everyone has a different version and definition of success, but you have to have people that support you. Because, like you said, like you're gonna have good days and bad days. But if you
Yes.
have people, I heard a quote and I can't remember who said it. They said, "Never quit on a bad day." Right. So if you have people
Mm.
around you who never allow you to quit on a bad day, then you're going to win.
Yes. Yes. I asked for help this week. I had a situation that was beyond my area of expertise, and it was emotional and complex. And I reached out to a friend and I said, "Here's a situation. I think you've been through this. I think you would have some wisdom to share." And she did. She did.
Absolutely.
I took notes because at this point in my life, I have to take notes because, Javon, I forget stuff now. It's really kind of a terrible
You're not
thing.
alone.
Oh my goodness. So I took some notes and I look back at those notes and I'm like, I'm so grateful that I reached out to her. And here's the interesting thing. When we ask for help, very often we're giving a gift to the helper. So if I came to you and said, Javon, I have this really, really difficult coaching situation, you would not see that as a burden. I
Right.
don't think. I think you'd see it as
No,
a gift, like, oh, I'm so glad Teresa reached out to me. I
absolutely.
can help her with that. So that is a lesson I've had to learn. When my dad passed away, here's a story. My dad passed away. It was very overwhelming. Anybody who's planned a funeral, lost a parent is very overwhelming. And my neighbor said, Teresa, how can I help? And ordinarily, I'm like, I got this. I'll do everything myself. And I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to give her, back in the days when we took photos with a camera and had them printed out. If anybody remembers that, we had all these pictures. And you want to make the slideshow and you want to put.
Hmm.
So I asked her, I said, would you scan these photos for me so they're digitized? She was joyful. She was thrilled. She's like, oh my gosh, I can do something to help you. That was such an epiphany moment for me that I have not forgotten since 2006.
Yes, that's it. It's an
You
impact
know,
for both people.
it
Because
is.
most people, I'm not going to say all, but most people want to be helpful, right, to people they care about. Most people have some level of empathy as well. So if they know you're going
Yes.
through a tough time, they're going to be there if they actually can help, right? Sometimes it's just a listening ear. So yes, thank you for sharing that story, Teresa, because that's the power of that, right? And I want the listeners, if you do struggle with sharing and asking for help, realize that that could be the moment. Like if your relationship, for instance, is not what it should be, it's probably because you're holding back, right?
Yeah,
Well, that sharing and allowing someone to be a part of your world, good days and bad, is such a powerful connector.
it is. It is. Well, I know from your lifetime of stories and situations and from the book that you've written, you've got some stories to share. And I asked you to, in fairness, I asked you to think about this before we got together because you probably have so many you could fill several hours. But what are some stories you'd like to highlight for our listeners to, one, get a peek inside your mind and your life, but also to get a chance to see what inspired you to write the book?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, like you said, so many. I shared one about when I sat in the jail cell, but another one that really stood out for me as I was writing this book was my time serving as a leader in the military. I've
Okay.
come into contact with so many young people who are just looking to find a way to make it, just looking for an
Yeah.
opportunity.
Yeah.
And I have some soldiers who still contact me today, who are like, man, I'm so happy that you were my leader at this point. You really made an impact. They let me know when they're getting married and change jobs and all these other things. And I thought about them while I was writing this book. Uh, when I first was assigned to one of these, it was 14 of them on one deployment. And when I was first assigned to them, I was told that they were misfits by their prior leadership.
Oh,
They couldn't
wow.
pass their physical fitness training. They couldn't perform their job at the level. They had behavioral issues, all these things. And I just thought about how, what that looked like probably for them, because they're being denigrated, they're being belittled, they're probably being,
Right.
paid no attention to, yelled at, all these things. I'm like, how can I help anyone? So thinking about that, when I heard that, when I had the conversations with them one to one, it was the exact opposite. They felt like they weren't heard. They felt like they weren't valued. They felt like they didn't matter, and it showed in their work.
Mhm.
It reflected in their personal life too. One of them actually tried to commit suicide at one point in her life. So I had to tap into a different, at this stage in my life, I had to tap into a different level of empathy and understanding. Um, so this book really was about what that looked like from my perspective. I tied some of that in about the action plan for lasting success. Is it's like the last chapter, where I talk about like how I had to find all of these different skills that I had never used prior to this mission
Right.
that we were on. I hadn't used empathy like that. I was nice to people, but it wasn't from a point of me listening to understand them. It was just I needed to get the job done. So
Yeah.
I had to go deep within myself when I heard from those young soldiers, and I said, you know what, I need to own their success. But for me to own their success, I have to really do some work within myself before we fly over across this pond. So
Yeah.
I went and I sat with myself again, and that was really when I started doing meditations and the gratitude practice that I
Wow.
do today. So I sat and because I wasn't in a good space. Let's just be honest. I
Mhm.
wasn't in a good space. I didn't want to do that deployment. And I had to sit down and say, you need to check yourself, because this is bigger than you. That your purpose is not for you, right? So you need to make sure you check
Mm.
in and really like be ready to help these soldiers. You're meant to be here to serve them. You're not leading them, you're serving them. And that's how I had to get into that
Wow.
that standpoint. Yeah. So
Servant leadership, man.
servant
Servant
leadership.
leadership.
Yeah. So I had to prep. And then, as I had these conversations and watched them, they taught me a lot. They taught me so much, because I never looked at it from the lens of, even though I went through it, like trying to grow and trying to find my path, I didn't see other people doing it until that point, that stage, because they were so open with me to share, their why. That was one of the questions I asked. Why are you here? Why did you want to say yes to the military? Why were
Sure.
you willing to go away from everything you knew and loved for this long? And when I asked them their why, I found my why.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, so many lessons. Jevon, I took little notes because I'm trying not to show that I'm writing, but I'm like taking little notes because there's so couple things. When you were talking about how because they were constantly berated, it's almost like they began to believe
Mm-hmm.
what they were being told.
Absolutely.
And this is I think we call it the Pygmalion complex. The Pygmalion complex.
Mm.
People, if you haven't heard of that, it's an old term. It's almost like that movie My Fair Lady, which is an old movie. But the Pygmalion complex is if I tell you that you're capable of great things and are awesome, and I see that within you, and you start to believe what I believe, you're going to step up to what I'm telling you. The converse is true. If I tell you you're terrible, you're never going to amount to anything, you're the worst I've ever seen, if you allow that belief to take hold, you will in fact live in alignment with that. So I when I do management training, that's one of the things I talk about is, share what you see in terms of potential for people.
Mm.
Reinforce that they're what they're really good at and what their strengths are, because even in people who aren't performing in a stellar way, if they know you believe in them, they are more likely to make it happen. And it's a mental thing. It's a mental
Absolutely.
thing.
No, that's so true. And you said it, you said it best. I love
It's
that. I have to look up Pygmalion complex. I love
look
that.
it up. But you intuitively knew that. I mean, it just makes sense. You're like, these
Yes,
people are not doing well because this has been reinforced for them. But you got to
exactly.
talk to each and every one. I love the finding your why. It's a little Simon Sinek. finding your why.
Yes.
You probably love his book, Leaders Eat Last, because
Yes.
it's about servant leadership. But all of these things, it's amazing how, because you've collected all of these messages holistically, you're just in an amazing personal space for yourself, but you're also in an amazing personal space for others because, and this is the last quote I wrote down, your purpose is not you. It's not for you, right?
Absolutely.
Purpose is
Absolutely.
for others. Man, when you embrace that, you live your life differently.
You do, and you realize you live it no matter what's going on. You're able to look at it from a perspective. I say I get to do this, right? No matter how
Yes.
crazy the day is going,
Oh, it's
whatever,
an
I get to
honor.
do this. Yes, it is. It is. It's an honor, and I know that if I wasn't walking in my purpose, I felt it when I was doing cybersecurity and all that other stuff. I felt heavy, but now as I get to do this and serve in my purpose and walk in these steps, I feel so light.
Yes. Yeah. It's where you're meant to be. And crazy as it sounds, all of the things that you experienced in your life, though a lot of it was not pleasant, have made you better for what
Absolutely.
you're doing now.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So
Yeah,
now
no, I agree.
I'm challenging you, man, because I write these articles, you wrote this book, we got all kinds of advice for other people. Is there anything in your book that you yourself sometimes struggle with? You're giving us advice with stuff that you struggle with. What is that?
Oh, I mean, a lot of this stuff, right? That when I talk about forgiving yourself, that's
Ah,
something that I have to constantly do because, like you said, all the things that have happened. Like sometimes I sit and think, like, man, how did I get here? But the person next to me is, not here anymore, or whatever has happened. So I have to forgive myself for, taking these actions that I've had. I have to forgive myself for mistakes I've made, for people I've hurt along the way. And I have to remember, like, all the things that have taken place I've learned from some type of lesson, and now I use that to be better every day. We're human; we make mistakes, so it's okay, right? And I
yes.
and sometimes I end sentences with that when I'm holding myself accountable. I'll say, you know what? Yes, you wish that you could take some of those words that you said back or change how you said it, but you are here now in this moment because of something that took place back then, right? And however you feel, process it,
Yes.
find out where it comes from, right? Because if we identify the root cause, then we can go ahead and change some things. And I talked about the triggers and stuff, so I like to do that exercise. What's the root cause of what I'm feeling, and how do I
Mm,
forgive myself properly? So sometimes that's what I struggle with, forgiving myself.
it's contemplative living. It's what you're
Yes.
doing, man.
Yes.
You don't just mindlessly go through life. You're thinking about, how's that working? What would I do differently going forward? And it's living a contemplative life. And that's another thought leader that I like. He's a priest. He's in the Southwest. I can see his face. I can't remember his name, but anyhow, he's a cool guy too, who is one of my virtual mentors.
Love
He
that.
is wild.
Life.
Yes, contemplative thinking. Father Richard Rohr. Boom.
Oh, okay.
Richard Rohr.
Yeah, I'm familiar with Richard. I haven't read any of his stuff though.
Ah, he is a rock star, and I got to meet him. Just so cool. But he is all about this leading a contemplative life. Like, let's be mindful. Let's think.
Absolutely.
Very big in practicing mindfulness, which is clearly a practice that you have and I do as well. And that forgiveness ties to intrinsic love, right?
Exactly.
That's all part of
Exactly.
that. So this one, I hate to put you on the spot for this. I did give you this one ahead of time, but if you haven't thought about it, it's a tough one. Do you have a motto, quote, or philosophy that you live by?
Yeah, I mean, I would say my philosophy is to 1% better each day. Right? That's how I live. That's my mantra. Be 1% better each day because I'm not always going to have what it takes to do everything that I set out to do when I wake up. So if I can just do that one thing that I know will move me closer to who I want to be in the future, then I've succeeded. Because I was a person that, and still another thing I struggle with is how hard I am on myself. because I feel like my plight is to help others, and to help others, sometimes you forget about yourself, right? So,
Yes.
yeah, so mine is be 1% better each day. And however that looks, just know I gave my best in that moment.
Cool. It's like that when we're on the plane and they say you have to put your own mask on first before you help others. And
Yes,
I have to remind myself of that
absolutely.
because, and I know we're birds of a feather here. The joy that I get from helping others is so overwhelming that sometimes I forget to put my own mask on first.
Yes, yes. When you're in heart work, that which we are, we're in heart work, right? We care. This is a passion to help others. Yeah, we forget one about ourselves, and then also as a business from the business side, you sometimes forget that you're running that business too. So
Yes.
yeah, you have to really temper yourself sometimes.
Yes. Well, I have been very mindful of weaving in um days of reflection and rest.
Absolutely.
And I have to block my calendar. And I'll be honest, sometimes I let some work sneak in because that day's blocked.
But
But
that's okay. That's okay. If you feel up to it, that's all right.
yes, yes. So here's a fun question just because I can. Who's your favorite football team?
Oh, the Philadelphia Eagles. Fly,
Boom!
Eagles fly. You know it.
That's
Go
what I'm talking
birds.
about. So
Absolutely.
I was so surprised because you're out in Texas.
Yes.
And I thought, oh, do not let him be a Dallas fan. We
Oh
could
no.
not have
My
that.
wife is a Dallas Cowboys fan, so that
Oh,
see what that looks
wow.
like during the season.
Holy cow. But I was so
Yeah.
happy to see a picture of you on social media with your Eagle shirt on. I'm like, dude,
Yes.
awesome.
Oh yeah. The Eagles through and
Awesome.
through. I
Awesome.
can't wait for September 6th.
I know. It's good. And meanwhile, the Phillies have had we've had an interesting season. We had an amazingly good start and then kind of not so much for a little bit. And now we're kind of limping along. But I think we're gonna have a good year with the Phillies too. So we should have Phillies and Eagles. So that'll be awesome. Um, tell us about, well, first of all, before I get to that question, what is a question that I haven't asked that you wish I had? Is there anything that I haven't asked that you're like, T, I wish you'd ask this?
Feel like you've been crushing it. I don't know if there's a question that you really haven't. I guess, what is my why? Because
Yeah, what is your why?
what is my why? That question is something that I evaluate actually daily, because my external why is again, the impact I make, but even closer to me is I have a 9-month-old daughter and a beautiful wife, right? So they
Yes,
drive me every day. I'm grateful that I can wake up and look over to them and say, you know what, it's going to be a great day. If nothing else happens, I have them, right?
yes,
My intrinsic why, and what really keeps me going is, you know, I carry I carry such a love for my community. And when I say my community, it's not just Black people. That's not what I mean. When I say community, I'm talking about people such as yourself who are doing this work day in and day out. But we're not gurus, right? People are
right.
not hearing what we say and all that stuff. So my plight and what drives me today is really to highlight people like yourself, and just get us in front of the world, so they can know that, you know what, you and I are
Yes,
just like everyone else. And if we can do this thing, and we
yes,
can get out here, and we can share our stories and impact, so can you. And that's really what drives me. I want people to start sharing their stories, good,
yes,
bad, and the ugly, because you know what, if you let someone else write that story for you, it won't tell truly who you were and the impact you made.
yes. We are
So
not,
that's why you need to write that book, Teresa.
I know. But we are not a paint by number. We need a blank canvas and we need to create the life we were meant to create.
Yes.
And we all have our stories. Like you, I am amazed at where I am at this point in my life. I am amazed. Didn't have a rich family, had all kinds of stuff going on. I think we both had our boot camp. So
Mm.
you had the military as big life lessons for you, and frankly, I had corporate life, which is very different. but life lessons nonetheless. And I
Absolutely.
think that my why has come to really helping people, particularly who are in that corporate environment, or really anybody, know that they can lead their best life. And
Yes,
and
absolutely.
they have passion and control. We are two peas in a pod, sir. I am
Yes, we are.
so grateful you reached out, and I'm so grateful that I was not like a meanie. I could have been like, oh man, I'm not talking to this guy.
Right.
What's up
Oh,
with this?
I get that sometimes, and I don't mind it at all. It's
Oh
like
my
part of the
goodness.
thing.
No, Joanne, you are a gift. You are a gift. I only hope we'll get together. I know we will at some point. You're going to speak in Philly. I'm going to speak down there. There's going to be
Absolutely.
something that happens. But you are truly, truly a gift. How can we help you? Is there something coming up that you need to share or promote, or is there something we can do to help you?
Yeah, I mean, for me, just thank you so much for everything you have done. Just allowing me to share
Ah,
this space
it's
with
a
you.
joy.
Lysandra, thank you for doing the chat and making sure everyone stays engaged. So I really appreciate this. Right now I'm really focused on, the speaking aspect of this business. So yeah, if you know of any engagements or conferences coming up that may be of interest, let me know.
Mm,
that's
we
that's it.
we need a follow-up call, man, and we're going to spend some time on that because I think we can help each other with that. And
Absolutely.
thank you so much for taking the time out to share. I know we're going to have a big following on our replay of this. I had a number of people write to me saying, T, I can't attend the live, but I want to hear this story. So we're going to have a bunch of people who definitely follow up. If
Perfect.
you are so inclined, my friends that are listening on Facebook or listening through Zoom, connect with us on Zoom. Reach out, give us a little Zoom connection, and that includes Lysandra as well. And hopefully we'll see you guys in September and November at the Pyramid Club if you can make it. And we'll probably have another Zoom in October. So group hug. Group hug. Lysandra,
Yes.
come on back.
Come on back.
Yay.
Thank you
Cool.
so much. Appreciate y'all.
Thank
Make sure
you.
you have a phenomenal weekend, everyone.